as MMA fans, we hear the word boring get used a lot when it comes to these UFC fighters, right? It feels like every matchup, there's almost always one guy who's just, this guy's boring, bro. Please don't let this guy win. He's boring. But in reality, are all of these guys so boring? We're going to be looking at who the real boring fighters are, in the UFC, and I'm going to be ranking them according to where they belong in terms of, the boring scale. So there's going to be some fan favorites in here. I'm going to say that right now. There's going to be some guys who even I like, and they're going to be on the boring tier list. So, don't get offended. Don't start crying in the comments. Don't go typing up an essay if your favorite fighter's in here, because it's my list, brother. It's my list. You got to calm down. And, let's get started with our first fighter, Gilbert Burns, who I'm throwing in the actual snooze fest category. See what I mean? I know Burns is a fan favorite, and, if there's a Burns fight booked, everyone's going to be, oh, Burns is on there. Okay, that's great. That's a great fight. I'm going to be tuning into that one. But it seems like every single time there's a Burns fight, it's just, he's kind of just, he's a grappler, right? He's a grappler, but he doesn't go for finishes. You'd think that, with the credentials that this guy has as a grappler, he'd be hunting a finish, submitting guys left and right, armbar over there, rear naked choke, anaconda choke. In reality, this guy has 2 submissions in the past 30 years, right? He doesn't go for submissions, bro. The only guy who, in recent memory, who he's just finished, is Neil Magny, right? This guy, other than that, he's comfortable just smudging you, just hugging you on the canvas. And a guy like JDM, that's a perfect example of a fight where, Gilbert Burns solidified himself as an actual snooze. Ow! What the fuck? I just bit myself, bro. Dude, he solidified himself as an actual snooze fest, okay? Maybe I'm being too cruel. Maybe I'm just, maybe I'm being a little too cruel. But in reality, I think he's an actual snooze fest. I'm sorry. Like, he hasn't had entertaining fights. His fights aren't entertaining, even when he's standing up and striking with a guy like, Belal, who, speaking of Belal, we're gonna be throwing him in the boring tier, okay? Because I know people are gonna say, well, bro, are you kidding me? What the fuck, bro? Belal actual snooze fest, bro. He's an actual snooze fest. But I'm sorry, he's not an actual snooze fest if he's willing to strike on the feet and has entertaining striking, and he has that marauder style. So, sure, he's boring, but when it comes down to, what it thumbs down to is he's boring because he's dominant. Okay, I'm sorry, I hate to say it. He's dominant. He's able to, he's able to pick people up and drop them on his heads. That's entertaining. Okay, that's entertaining, but it's just when he gets to the ground, he's not necessarily hunting a finish. So that is boring. It's boring. He is in this category pretty high up for a reason, because at the end of the day, you don't expect him to ground and pound TKO you or, anything like that. But hey, he does actually have a TKO over Sean Brady, and he's standing up and banging with Gilbert Burns, and Gilbert Burns, in my eyes, is the one who made that fight a little boring, because, I know he was injured, but still, are we really gonna say, Burns is always out there putting on a scrap, he's always putting on a great, entertaining fight, when half of the time he's just looking to get you down and just, hug on your leg and fucking, hug you. I know Belal's similar, but at least Belal is actually doing some stuff that's a little entertaining, okay? And we're not considering outside the octagon, because, Belal is pretty entertaining outside the octagon. And we're gonna talk about, who should we talk about? Well, here, I got a special made category for this guy. Right at the bottom there, saving their reputation. It's Israel, the style bender Adesanya, okay? Listen, style bender, you'd think when you first hear this guy, he's out here, he's mixing everything up, and he's KOing a guy, and he's submitting a guy, and, this guy's a fucking beast. But, when you watch some of his fights, they're a little boring. But the truth is, that reputation is kind of fixing itself. He's no longer as boring as he used to be. Because, you think back to, like, the Yoel fight. Literally the most boring fight in UFC history. And you think about, Jared Cannonier fight. It's just cruise mode Izzy. As Lucas Tracy likes to say. It's the crude mode Izzy. Where he's, as a champ, he's playing it a little safe, and he's, more than comfortable to just beat you by a single strike and win the fight. When, a controversial decision or a close fight, he's comfortable to do that. But it seems like, as of recently, he has had some good, entertaining performances, like against, Alex Pereira, Dricus du Plessis. He's had these entertaining performances that I, even as a bit of a hater, okay, I'm not a full hater when it comes to Izzy. I actually like some of the stuff he does. I find him kind of funny sometimes he's a bit cringe, but you know, I respect him a bit. And I watched the Joe Rogan podcast that he just had with Joe Rogan, and he also said, you know, I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. He said that he's going back to Contender Izzy. He's going to be back to Contender Izzy, you know, when everyone was hyping him up and he was the most entertaining thing on the block. That's what he's going back to. And, you know, to be fair, if Izzy does go back to that, he is going to be entertaining. And his last fights have been kind of entertaining. So I could see him, you know, in theory, if, like he says, if he doesn't have anything to fight for anymore because he doesn't, you know, care about the belt, I could see this guy being more entertaining and even working his way back up to, you know, one of the more entertaining fighters in the UFC. But as of right now, he's just at the bottom of the boring fighters because he still has that reputation of being a little boring, but he's fixing it. He's fixing it, okay? And let's move on. Let's put our first guy in the this one's going to decision tier, okay? So this is a guy who, you know, guaranteed, you see a fight booked with this guy, you're going to say, oh, this one's going to decision for sure. Colby Covington, okay? Colby Covington, I'm putting him into this one's going to decision because, you know, this guy, he'll put on a parade for his fights. He'll act like he's gonna, you know... You think that this guy's, you know, he's a fucking American wrestler beast. He's gonna submit you, ground and pound you. He'll do whatever the fuck he wants with you when he gets you in there. But in reality, this guy hasn't had a submission in 13.5 years. And he's submitting Lil Pump in the fucking gym instead of actual fighters because, you know, he can't really submit people. He's not a finisher. And I'm sorry, he's not the most entertaining grappler. But the thing is, what's saving him... Okay, what's saving him? His saving grace... Let me move my mic. His saving grace is the Kamaru Usman fights. Those are, you know, boosting him up a bit. So instead of being boring, which is where I'd really like to put him, I'm going to put him in this one's going to decision fight just because he's had some boring fights and he's not a finisher. He's not a finisher, okay? Nothing wrong with that. You know, not all of us are finishers, but, you know, he's going to decision too often. So let's move somebody to the willing to stink it up tier. And we actually have a recent contender for this. Somebody who recently put themselves in this division, or in this fucking tier. And it is Mr. Mario Bautista. You know, Mario Bautista, he goes out there at the press conference against Jose Aldo, and he's saying, I see this fight being a bloodbath. It's going to end with me covered in blood. And, you know, yeah, I'm going to win this fight for sure, man. It's going to be a fucking bloodbath. What does he end up doing? He ends up fucking smudging and just stalling against the octagon the whole entire fight. So, I'm sorry, but Mario Bautista, I don't care about your past performances, whatever you've done. You are fucking boring now. You're boring. The whole MMA community has turned against you because you wouldn't even engage in the striking without thinking about, you know, I gotta shoot for a takedown here and fucking fail it miserably. And, you know, fair enough. There are other guys who have failed takedowns against Jose Aldo because he does have probably the best takedown defense in the UFC. And, you know, it's not all your fault, but in reality, it fucking is if you don't give up on shooting that takedown and you just, you know, you're happy to just hug yourself there and just hug, you know, let me just hug here and I'm gonna stink it up. But you're not fully boring, I guess, because we do got to consider that, you know, this isn't your only fight in the UFC. You've had other fights that were alright, but dude, I'm sorry, fucking Bautista, you're boring still. You're still boring. Let's move on to another guy who struggled against Jose Aldo, you know, struggled to take him down. That's Merab. Okay? Merab, I'm going to throw him in the boring category just because his fight with Henry Cejudo was pretty entertaining, and I could see a fight with a guy like Umar also being entertaining. And, you know, if this guy goes against a grappler, it's, you know, it's not a bad fight. But the thing is, you know, he's going against these strikers who he could just chain wrestle, just shoot for takedowns constantly, and he's not really going to get stopped, so it ends up being boring. It's kind of the situation where it's like domination, and that's why it's boring. And I hate to say domination, because when you think of Merab, you don't necessarily think of he's dominating you on the feet, he's obviously, you know, he's the best grappler ever, because he's not the best grappler. It's just the fact that he can shoot for so many takedowns. That's what makes him, you know, a good fighter. But hey, he is boring. I personally don't think he's an actual snooze fest, though, because the Henry Cejudo fight, entertaining. He tries to make his fights entertaining in the octagon, you know. He'll look like a, you know, a bit of a fucking dum-dum when he's striking on the feet. But it's kind of fun to watch. It's fun to watch almost. And now that he's fighting for the championship, or at the championship level, it's going to be more entertaining. Especially this fight against Umar is probably going to be a good one. Let's move on to somebody who you probably didn't even think this guy was going to be on here, and you'll probably, you'll say, what the fuck's he doing here? But, listen, Mohammed Usman, brother, you're going to, next to Colby Covington, we're going to put Usman here, Mohammed Usman here, because you'd think that this guy, he's a heavyweight, Usman has a brother, right, and he's fighting at heavyweight, Kamaru Usman's brother fighting at heavyweight, wow, that guy must be a beast, right? No, he's not. He's terrible. His fights are boring. They go to decision. He has no thud on his punches. He sucks at everything, pretty much. I'm sorry. I hate to say it because, I don't want one of those guys in the comments to be like, bro, you need to stud up. You can't fucking criticize fighters. But he sucks, bro. He's terrible. He's not a world championship level. He's not even a top 15 level. He's genuinely very fucking bad. And his fights are boring as shit to watch. Like, you'd think that, this guy, since he's at heavyweight, he might be landing some knockout blows, and he's a big guy, and he's an athlete, right, because he looks athletic. He's not. He's boring as shit. So, he's lucky that he's even in the this is going to decision category, but guaranteed his fights go to decision at heavyweight, which is pretty sad to think about. But, he's lucky. He's lucky that I'm not, hating on him even more. And, yeah, I mean, there's not much to talk about, because it's fucking Mohammed Usman. Who cares? But let's move on to another heavyweight who manages to still be boring, despite the fact that this guy has a bunch of finishes. And, in his recent fight, sure, he's been putting on some finishes, but it is Jailton Almeida. Jailton Almeida, this guy's going in the boring tier because Jailton Almeida, despite the fact that this guy has elite grappling, he's a very good grappler and a very elite grappler, underrated because people look at him as this guy who only smudges. But I'm sorry, that's what he does when he gets to the top of the top, right? Because sure, he could finish the local homeless man who they pulled off, the streets and gave a chance to fight in the UFC. He can finish that guy who's a blob and, who has no takedown defense and sucks. He can finish them. He'll submit them. He'll do whatever, because this guy has a bunch of finishes on his record. But when it comes to the top, not even the tip top, when it's a guy like Derek Lewis who, he's good at defending on the ground and just standing back up, right? Derek Lewis loves to just stand right back up. But I'm sorry, Jailton Almeida didn't throw a single strike when Derek Lewis was on the ground. He just literally sat on top of him and got booed, didn't give a shit, literally hated by all the fans. And then, maybe that was a one-time thing, maybe sure in his next fight. This guy went 5 rounds with Derek Lewis, by the way, just sitting on top of him. That's insane to think about, but in his next fight, he had the chance to, well, he's going against Curtis Blades, who's a grappler, and, this could be a good fight. No. A complete fucking... Literally just... He hung onto Curtis Blades' back for dear life. Backpacked him. Looked very good in the grappling, but he didn't hunt for submissions. He didn't go for anything. And Curtis Blades eventually got that, up against the fence. He just started fucking hammer fisting him, I'm pretty sure, right? And that's the thing about Jailton Almeida, is he's not that entertaining. He's pretty boring, if anything. I don't think he's an actual snooze fest just because we have seen him get finishes against, absolute blobs, but still, he's boring, so he belongs in that category. Let's move on. Right, next up, we got a former champ, a guy who's fought some of these guys on here. It's Leon Edwards. Leon Rocky Edwards. We're putting him at the actual snooze fest, because other than the single leg kick, or the head kick, the single head kick that this guy landed on Kamaru Usman, he doesn't have any finishes, and he's just fucking boring overall. He's happy to do, the cruise mode Izzy style, where he'll just maybe throw 50 strikes in the entire fight, and he'll win a fight like that. Or he'll do nothing. He'll do nothing unless his opponent does something, and even then, he doesn't really do much. Because, listen, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Belal Muhammad actually made that Leon Edwards fight somewhat entertaining, because Belal Muhammad was just marching forward, picking him up, throwing him on his head. But Leon Edwards, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He'll go in there, he'll happily just, just sit at fucking range and, just counter you, and that's it. And it's actually fucking sad to watch, because this guy gets hyped up as, not anymore, but I'm saying he was getting hyped up as a world-class striker, he's amazing on feet, he's great, and he's very mixed, he can be able to mix it up well, but he doesn't have entertaining fights, bro. He doesn't. He's not even entertaining outside the octagon, and that's what's the sad part about it, because, a guy like Belal understands, he even makes fun sometimes that he's not the most entertaining guy, but when it comes to outside the octagon, you see him on Twitter yapping. He's always, trying to involve himself into media. He's in fucking Twitter spaces with MMA Guru and Darren Till. That's fucking entertaining, okay? He's entertaining outside the octagon, But a guy like Leon Edwards, what did this guy do as champ? We didn't get a single interview. We didn't hear a fucking peep from this guy as champ. And now that he's lost the belt, we don't even know what he's doing. What the fuck is he doing? Is he alive? Can we get a welfare check on this guy? Like, is he good, bro? I don't know. And that's the problem with Leon Edwards, is he's not only boring in the cage and going to decision guaranteed, as a striker as well. And as a striker who is very low output, it is, oh my god, it's so fucking boring. I'm sorry, he has to be actual snooze fest. I actually like his story, and I like him as a person. It's just we don't get to see his personality. Other than like the Joe Rogan podcast. That's the only time I've seen him, you know, actually speak in a long format. And he seems like a nice guy. He seems like a cool guy. He has a cool story. But, bro, that head kick is the only thing that keeps, you know, some people... Because at this point, I don't think anybody finds him entertaining, but some people still think that he's, you know, a knockout guy or whatever. Which he's not, but, you know, let's move on. Let's move on. Who should we do? We'll do, listen, one of my favorite fighters. We're actually going to go to one of my favorite fighters here. Sean Strickland. And I'm going to be, you know, a little bit unbiased here. I'm going to toss him into this one's going to decision. Because I personally actually find Sean Strickland, you know, his fight style, it's decently entertaining when, depending on who he goes up against. But a lot of the times this guy is going to decision. And just the fact that you know that he's never going to knock somebody out. Chances are he's never going to knock somebody out, right? Unless it's, you know, a boost. But he's never going to knock out anybody. And he's just, you know, he's going to go to a 5-round decision. And you really cannot watch this guy's fights back. It's pretty boring to watch them back. But listen, I still love Sean Strickland. His personality makes up for it. I know a lot of people don't like his personality anymore. They're like, bro, I'm getting sick of this. It's the fact that he hypes up his fights so much and makes them seem like they're a war that I understand why it's kind of like he overpromises and underdelivers. Like, that's the thing that he does. He kind of fucks himself over by doing that, in my opinion. And, you know, he's more than happy to just, he keeps throwing his jab and he just fucking teeps at range. But I feel like the Paulo Costa fight kind of threw away from the fact that he can be entertaining in the octagon at times, and he does do some entertaining shit. So that Paulo Costa fight really, like, you know, it kind of made him gain this reputation by a lot of people that he's kind of boring, which, fair enough, he is a bit boring, but I'm going to put him in this one's going to decision category, because you're going to expect him to go to decision, but is he the most boring? No, not in my eyes, but he's still a bit boring, right? Let's move on to, who should we move on to? All right, we have 2 guys left here. And, listen, I fucking love this guy. Well, actually, no. We're going to talk about that guy last. We're going to move on to Aljo for our second to last. I'm actually going to put him in the willing to stink it up tier. Because Aljo, he's able to get finishes. We've seen him get finishes. I know there was the one against, you know, one-armed TJ Dillashaw where he TKO'd him or whatever. But that was like a, you know, a once in a blue moon thing because he was, you know, a bit disabled when he walked into that octagon. But we've seen him get finishes. We've seen him put on decent fights. And, you know, we got like Corey Sandhagen. He submitted Corey Sandhagen in the first round. I know that was a while ago, but, dude, Aljo's able to put on entertaining performances. He's able to. It's just he elects not to, and he is willing to stink it up. And he's more than happy to just go in there and, you know, not hunt for a submission. Like against Calvin Kattar. He didn't do anything in that fight. He wasn't really entertaining, and he was a bit of a snooze fest in that fight. Like, it just, I don't know. I don't want to put him all the way up to boring, or even this one's going to decision, because sometimes you never know. This guy can actually get some good finishes in there, and he has a decent amount of finishes. So I'll put him in willing to stink it up. And let's move on to our last guy, Shamil the Blob Gaziev. I'm sorry, Shamil. I love Shamil. And I personally think his personality and the way he grimaces in the octagon makes up for this. But, brother, I'm sorry, Shamil. Let me move my cam. You're going in the boring. You're going in the boring tier. Because Shamil, your last fight, brother, it's very boring, brother. I'm not gonna lie, brother. You had the crowd booing you. Everyone booing you, brother. It's boring. Okay? So, Shamil, you know, his last fight was in, Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia, something like that, right? It was wherever it was. He had his home crowd, basically, you know, in a sense, booing him, because even they knew what he was doing was fucking boring as shit, bro. He was just, you know, he was happily just fucking smudge grappling, sitting on top, not doing anything, not throwing a single ground and pound strike. Very boring. And aside from that, he's a bit boring because he gasses out so easily. It's kind of fun to watch almost. So maybe he doesn't even belong in the boring tier list, just because if you, let's say this. If you hear a Shamil the Blob Gaziev fight get booked, you're going to want to tune in. You're going to be entertained because Shamil's a funny guy. He might gas out. He's probably going to be grimacing at you and, marching you down a little. And he'll be spitting out blood from his mouthpiece. Spit out his mouthpiece 7 times in the fight. And he had a great fight against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Like, that was an entertaining fight. And he, it's fun to watch him gas out almost. It's not that the fight's entertaining. It's just he's funny as a person. So that's what adds to it. But other than that, he's a bit boring. I'm sorry, Shamil. You are a bit boring, brother. Maybe you can fix this reputation. Maybe we'll put you in saving reputation later. But he's a bit boring, bro. Like, I'll be tuning into his next fight, of course, because he's a legend. The Lucas Tracy channel legend is Shamil the Blob Gaziev. And he really has continued his way into all MMA fans' hearts. We all love this guy. We're all going to tune into his next fight. Let's just hope it's not as boring as it was last time. But hey, that's it for the tier list. That's it for the video. Let me know if you disagree with any of these placements. Maybe Leon Edwards is way too high up. He should actually be all the way at the bottom, and he's really entertaining. But listen, this is all my opinion. Let me know if you disagree with anything, where I should have put one of these guys or whatever. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Leave a like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one.